I didn't cradle the baby. I didn't kiss my wife's forehead. I didn't let a single tear fall. While the room around me overflowed with joy, I stood there, hands shoved deep in my pockets, my stare colder than glass, and I spoke a line, so heavy it shattered every smile in sight. We'll fill it out once the DNA results are back. Every head turned toward me, like I'd just lobbed a grenade into the most sacred day of someone's life. And that was only the start. I stood a few steps from the hospital bed, hands still in my pockets, watching Amanda, my wife, holding the newborn, like it was the holiest thing she'd ever touched. Her face was drained from labor, yet lit with a glow of pure joy. I didn't move closer. I didn't reach for the child. Beside Amanda stood my mother, Evelyn, and Amanda's mother, Carol. Both of them were beaming, their eyes brimming with tears, as if the universe itself had handed them a miracle. I stayed locked in place. I could feel my mother's eyes studying me. Not a word spoken, but every inch of me judged. The air was tight, until the door opened and a nurse entered, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Walker, I'll need you to complete the birth certificate." I turned to her, my voice steady but firm. "We'll fill it out after the DNA test confirms." The room froze. Amanda's head jerked up so fast it startled the baby, who whimpered as if it sensed the storm rising. She looked at me like I'd stabbed her heart. "What the hell are you saying, Jason?" Her voice shook, eyes clouded with disbelief. Carol gasped, clutching her chest like she'd been blindsided. My mother's fists tightened, silent but sharp as blades. I spoke slowly, clearly, no need to shout. "I'm saying I know you cheated, Amanda. And I need proof this child is mine." "You've lost your mind," Amanda hissed, her breathing shallow, panicked. "How could you humiliate me like this? You're damaging a new mother's mental health." Carol stepped forward, voice desperate. "Jason, please, not now. Amanda just gave birth. She could spiral into postpartum depression if you keep this up." Evelyn was less gentle. "Jason Walker," she snapped, "you will not treat your wife this way. I did not raise you to be cruel." I let them talk, let their words crash around me like wind. Then I raised a hand, signaling silence. "Amanda," I said, my eyes fixed on hers. "Should I call Marshall Jones?" Her face froze. The name struck the room like a whip crack. She stammered, "No, I'm not involved with him." I gave a faint nod, pulled a folded paper from my pocket. "Then why?" I said as I opened it. "Did you send him this?" I read aloud, word for word. /*. "My husband can never find out about us. I don't want anything from you. /*. The room went dead quiet, the heart monitor pounding like a hammer in our chests. Amanda unraveled before me, her eyes wide, lips trembling. "How did you get that?" I didn't blink. "Marshall sent me the screenshot." She shook violently, clutching the baby so hard. It looked like she was trying to make it a shield. Her voice cracked through sobs. "He swore he'd never tell." I tilted my head. "So you did sleep with him?" Her cry broke open, her head thrashing side to side. "No, it's not like that." My mother spoke softly. "Jason, it's still unclear. The baby could be yours." Carol jumped in. "Yes. How do you know for sure? Maybe you misread the situation." I exhaled, unclenched my fists, stayed calm. 4 months ago, I discovered Amanda was cheating. I stayed quiet. Not for her, but for the baby she carried. I didn't want to damage her mentally during the pregnancy. But now the child is here. And it's time the truth comes out. I paused. "If this child is mine, I'll own every responsibility. If he's not, I'll walk away." Silence. I turned back to Amanda, her face swollen with tears. "And as for you," I said, "we're done. I'll handle the divorce." I didn't return home that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly. Window rolled down, letting the wind sting my face. But no matter how fast I drove, my mind replayed the image of Amanda holding that baby, her eyes looking at me as though I was the cruel one. Why is it always so easy for liars to cry? 3 days later, I sat across from Joanna Hines, a family lawyer a friend had recommended. Her office was cold, her words sharp as steel. "Do you have evidence of the affair?" "I do." I placed on the desk the screenshots. the email to Marshall, and the confession that detonated the hospital room. Joanna studied me, then asked, "Are you sure you want to file under adultery? No chance of reconciliation." I shook my head. I let her carry the baby in peace. Now I need peace for myself. That night, Amanda texted me 17 times. I didn't open a single one. The next morning she called relentlessly. Then Carol called. Then my mom. "Jason," she said softly, her voice heavy with concern. "I know you're angry, but maybe this isn't the right time." I cut her off. "You want me to wait until Amanda is stable enough to keep lying? But the baby, Mom, if he's mine, I'll step up. But I'm not a pity machine. I'm the one who was betrayed." She said nothing. "And maybe you're thinking the same thing. Jason, isn't this too harsh? Is tearing the family apart really worth it?" I used to ask myself that too. But let me ask you, have you ever stared in the mirror and not recognized the person looking back? When you live with daily lies, you'll understand. If you've felt this kind of betrayal, or you refuse to swallow fake apologies, subscribe to Revenge Insight. We don't just tell stories. We resurrect memories you thought you buried. For days later, Joanna called. The DNA test results were in. I wasn't nervous. I had nothing left to lose. When she slid the paper across the table, I already knew what I'd read. But I read anyway. Probability of paternity, 0%. No anger. No shock. Just the confirmation of what my gut had screamed for months. That afternoon, I drove to Carol's house. Amanda opened the door. Wrinkled t-shirt, pale, sleepless eyes. "You're here," she whispered. I said nothing. "Where's your mom?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. In the kitchen sat Carol, and my mother. No surprise. They'd been best friends for 3 decades. I knew my mom wanted to witness this. I pulled a white envelope from my pocket, handed it to Carol. "Read it aloud." She opened it slowly. I turned and walked out of that house. The first time I'd entered that place, I thought I had a family. This time, I left with nothing but myself and the truth. I had never set foot in a courtroom before. But that morning, when I stepped into the divorce proceedings, I didn't feel fear, just a deep desire for it to finally be over. Amanda sat across from me, dressed in a plain beige outfit. Her makeup was carefully applied, but it couldn't hide the dark shadows under her eyes. She looked at me, I looked back. Neither of us blinked away. At my side was Joanna, my attorney, sharp, relentless, unshaken. Beside Amanda sat her lawyer, a young man who seemed inexperienced. Clearly no match for Joanna's steel. The judge was an older woman, eyes keen and lips tightly set, like someone who'd listened to too many lies in her career. Today, no doubt, was just another one of those days. The hearing began. Amanda was granted the first chance to speak. Her voice wavered slightly, though her words were clearly rehearsed. "Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes. I let my emotions take control. But I never meant to leave my husband. I was lonely. Jason was always away traveling. I felt like a single mother even before I gave birth." I listened as if watching a play, every line familiar, as if I already knew the script. She lowered her head, inhaling deeply. "I cut off the other man once I knew I was pregnant. I wasn't sure whose baby it was, but I chose to believe in my husband. I still love Jason and I want to fix this." The judge scribbled notes, her face unreadable. Then Joanna rose, her stance firm, her voice unwavering. "Your Honor, my client has endured deceit for nearly a year. Amanda didn't just have an affair. She conceived another man's child and kept it hidden. We have proof, text messages, emails, screenshots, and most importantly, a DNA test." She held up a folder. A court officer delivered it to the judge. Joanna turned to Amanda. "You claimed you ended things with your lover when you discovered your pregnancy." Amanda nodded. "Then why do phone logs, call records, and saved conversations show you stayed in contact with Marshall Jones throughout those 9 months? In one message you wrote, 'I know you're scared, but Jason will never find out.'" The room fell silent. You also wrote, "You don't need to do anything. I'll let Jason raise the child if it turns out to be yours." Amanda's fists tightened, nails digging into her palms. Joanna stepped forward slowly, carefully dismantling Amanda's story. You said it was loneliness. But loneliness doesn't justify betrayal. Not when your husband publicly shared photos of dinners together, celebrated your birthdays, and posted thank you notes to honor you. Those are not the actions of a man who abandoned you. I never took my eyes off Amanda. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of Joanna's words. You claim you still love my client. But if Jason was such a bad husband, why fight so hard to keep him? Why not be with the man you said understood you better? Amanda broke, her voice cracking. Because Jason is a good man. He's the best husband I've ever had. I know I destroyed everything, but the thought of losing him is unbearable. Joanna gave a small nod, as if she had been waiting for that exact answer. Then she returned to her seat. Nothing more needed to be said. The judge scanned the room. The court acknowledges that the defendant has admitted to adultery and to bearing a child fathered by another man. The DNA results confirm that the plaintiff is not the biological father. The court further recognizes that the plaintiff has no legal or moral obligation to maintain this marriage. Her tone was calm, but each word was a hammer driving nails into a coffin. Divorce is granted. Assets will be divided according to the initial proposal. Custody of the child is awarded to the biological mother. The gavel struck 3 times, sharp, final. Amanda remained frozen, unable to grasp what had just happened. I stood, walked out first, and didn't look back. A part of me half expected her to chase after me, call my name, beg for forgiveness, promise to change. But she didn't. She stayed silent. And I didn't need to hear another word. I assumed that once the judge's gavel came down, closing the chapter of my marriage, a rush of freedom would sweep over me, like the first breath of spring after a long winter. But it didn't. There was no applause, no triumphant overture. Only silence. A heavy, stretching silence. And an emptiness that pressed down so hard it almost broke me. I never despised Amanda, truthfully. I almost wished I had. Because hatred would have been simpler to carry than this muted disappointment. Too dull for rage, too sharp to ignore. A few weeks later, I packed up and left. The new place was smaller, but it suited me. I didn't need much. Just enough room to sleep, to work, and not be haunted by the empty chair where she once curled up reading every night. I rebuilt life with the basics. Hand-poured coffee, morning runs, old playlists I hadn't touched in years, teaching myself how to stand alone, without leaning on anyone. Then my mother called. Her tone hushed, like she was trying to tuck something heavy behind simple words. Jason. I'm at Carol's place. Amanda, she's gone. I froze. Not because love still lingered. It didn't. But because nothing prepares you for the strange ache that hits when someone who once betrayed you vanishes from the world forever. The police said it was an accident. She slipped near the water, dragged under by a crocodile. I didn't want details. I didn't go to see her one last time. All I could think about was, what about Tim? A week later, I visited Carol. Grief had aged her years and days. Hollow eyes, lined skin. A voice frayed by endless crying. In the middle of the room, a boy clutched a teddy bear, watching me carefully. You're Miss Linda's son, right? I nodded, sitting beside him. So what are you to me now? I had no neat answer. Just his eyes, wide, fragile, already touched by losses a child should never know. And then I heard myself say firmly, I'm the one who'll walk you to school. Who'll pick you up when you crash your bike. Who'll listen when that kid in class gives you trouble. He didn't question further. Just nodded. I adopted Tim, not to prove anything, not for appearances, but simply because, if I could spare one child from feeling abandoned, I should. Even if I hadn't brought him into this world. My mother backed me completely. No judgment. No pushing. For the first time, I felt she understood me, without needing words. One afternoon, while helping her organize books, I stumbled on a weathered leather notebook. Tucked inside was a faded photograph. Her and Carol, in uniform. Eyes hard. Expressions carved by experiences that left no room for fear. On the back, *Langley 1999. George Bush Center for Intelligence. Asterisk. I looked at her stunned. She just shrugged. I never told you. Sometimes saying things doesn't help anyone. For the first time in a long time, I laughed. Out loud. So you worked for the CIA? Just logistics. Logistics, yet you can still read me like an interrogation subject. Well, I'm your mom. We sat in silence after that. No more explanations. But from that day forward, I knew I wasn't walking through this alone. 6 months later, I met Kelly. A veteran. Widowed. No children. And she didn't pry into my past. She never asked about Amanda. Never pushed about Tim. Just one question. Do you like sharing quiet with someone? I said yes. And that's how we started. Slow, gentle, but real. A year later, we married. My mom beamed through the whole ceremony. Carol, frail but determined, was there too. And Tim, in his tiny suit, stood proudly by my side, as if he'd always been part of my story. 2 months later, my mother passed. Peacefully. No pain. Just sleep. Carol followed not long after. In losing them both, I learned the greatest lesson. Strength isn't about controlling others. It's about refusing to let your past keep its grip on you. And now, tonight, I sit at my desk. Tim sketching at the kitchen table. Kelly reading quietly on the couch. No grief, no fury. Just stillness. And I realize after everything, I didn't just survive. I returned to life. What about you? Have you ever risen after being broken? Ever forgiven? Not someone else, but yourself? If you have, I'd like to hear it. Share it in the comments. And if this story stirred something in you, subscribe to Revenge Insight. Or pass this along to someone who needs it most. We may not heal the whole world, but at least, we don't have to face it alone.